All right, I am over here at the snare drum, and what I've decided to do today is, in addition to kind of talking about fine-tuning your snare drum, I'm going to replace the top and bottom head and the snare strainers on my 1969 Supraphonic. And any Drummer Talk U listeners or viewers have noticed that that this snare drum is pretty. The head is pretty well worn on it, and to be honest, I've been really afraid to change the head. I've been afraid to change the head because I absolutely love the way it sounds, and I was so worried that that I wouldn't be able to get this sound back. So I'm going to take the plunge, and I'm going to replace, like I said, the batter side, the snare side, and the snares themselves. I would like to take this opportunity to say that that this is being put out in the DTU video feed as a special feature of Drummer Talk University. Of course, this is in the audio stream for the podcast. Will always be free. The podcast will always be free. However, this is being released in video form for our Drummer Talk U subscribers. Drummer Talk U is simply $1.99 a month, and that helps to support Drummer Talk. So there you go. All right, this snare drum's in pretty bad shape, even though I love the way it sounds. A great snare drum sound. Absolutely love the way it sounds, but the head's in bad shape, and the snare wires are in really bad shape. I lost one set of snare wires, and I can kind of live with it, but I had another snare wire break off on me, and I've been kind of in trouble ever since. And every time I go to move it, it kind of stabs me. Also, this bottom head that I have here, this is a 1969 Ludwig Supraphonic blue and olive badge. Absolutely love it. But it does have the original snare strands, and actually has the original batter side, or not batter side, snare side, old Weather King snare head, and there's a hole that I've had to repair, just put some tape over it. But I've gone to my local drum shop, Memphis Drum Shop, and I got a replacement top head and a replacement bottom head. Actually, the top head I've had for quite a while. The top head I'm going to be putting on is a Genera dry head. I don't like to add more muffling onto a snare drum if I don't have to. If I'm in the studio, then a lot of times they'll want me to put moon gel or tape, gaff tape, or things like that. But I don't like to if I don't have to, especially live and especially teaching lessons and such. This is a chrome over steel, so it's not a chrome over brass Supraphonic by Ludwig. However, it's still a very bright sound, and so the Genera dry head has holes kind of in the outside, as well as another ring of plastic on the bottom, on the underside, and that helps to kind of dial in some of the overtones without having to use the internal muffling. As a matter of fact, I am probably, I don't know if I can bring myself to do it. I was thinking I was going to go ahead and remove that today for you, but I think I'm going to keep it, because I don't know if I want just a big gaping hole on the side of my drum. It's not hurting anything on the inside. You'll also notice that I have lug locks on my Supraphonic that I'm going to try to put back on. However, the way these lug locks work is they're just little pieces of plastic that fit on the lug to keep it from rotating. That's how I've been able to maintain such a great sound on this snare drum without having to kind of keep cranking it. So the other thing I want to say is for the snares. There are a lot of different snares. Company Pure Sound comes to mind. Pearl makes a large variety, and Gibraltar, but it seems that snare wires are kind of, I don't know. I tend to think they're a little overrated. So what I've actually gone and done is I've bought what Ludwig is currently putting on their Supraphonics. Now, I'm not necessarily a vintage drum restorer. I don't have much interest I don't have much interest in trying to recreate the sound of a 1969 Supraphonic, but I am going to stick with the Ludwig snares. Like I said, it's what they're putting on their current Supraphonic. Not much has changed on the Supraphonic. The P, I think it's the P43, P43, P45 strainer is still the strainer they put on their Supraphonics, and it's, you know, if it's not broken, then by all means don't try to fix it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this snare butt plate off and get these snares off, at least to a little extent here. So I'm just going to unscrew my butt plate. Oop, wrong way with my ratchet. Let me unscrew the other side. I should. There. Just gonna slip out this slip out these snares. All right. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and replace these the snare, kind of the snare, the cords that hold on the snares. I do have a couple of extras, so I'm going to replace those. Let me grab a pair of scissors here. I'm just going to snip off this side over here. Not a bad idea to just for, as far as like for snare drum maintenance, not a bad idea to kind of do this on a regular basis. It helps keep the snares tight, and it ensures that these aren't going to break in the middle of a gig. And these are the original strands. Again, I'm not a vintage purist, so I have no problem throwing those away. Cool. Going to take off this bottom head first, and I like using a little speed key, a dialing key for this. If I was, I guess if I was the man, I would have, I would have a drill bit or something. I do want to take this head off in as uniform as uniform a way as possible, which means I'm not going to pull off one lug and then go around. I'm going to use the same technique I would for putting the head on as I want to for taking the head off. So I'm going to go around. Okay, I'm going to go beside, then go directly across. Go over, then across, over, and across. All right, in a kind of quasi star motion. Okay, now once I have a whole bag full of drum keys. Once I have that, what I'm going to do, if you have a couple of spare drum keys, I'm going to put drum keys on the lugs and spin them. The reason I like putting drum keys on the lugs is it gives the lugs kind of some weight and they'll spin a lot easier. Put drum keys on the lugs and spin. Drum keys on the lugs and spin. And I dropped a key. Drum keys on the lugs. Spin. Oops. All right, so my head is now ready to come off. I'm going to pull it off. Wow. This head has seen its better days. So we shall retire that and be about our business. I want to take the opportunity now to kind of look inside. Have a lot of junk in there. There's that. There's the muffling device that I don't necessarily want to keep, but I don't want to take it off because I don't want a bunch of holes kind of in on the side of my snare. All right, like I said, chrome over steel. I like the chrome over steel Supras because they are a lot less likely to pit. So I do like that, and reliable anti-galvanic. That is what's written on the inside there. All right, I'm just gonna kind of shake out the drum, sweep it up later, just to get some of the junk out of it. And that's disgusting, but I'm over it. All right, now I'm gonna put this bottom head back on. It's a drum from 1969, so my hoop is not perfectly round, but you know what? That's okay. It's okay. Gonna put this Evans. It's just an Evans Hazy 300 snare side. You do want a very thin. I like very thin. I like very thin snare sides because I do like to crank them, but I don't like them to affect the tone that much. So we're gonna drop that on. So I'm looking for. Doesn't really matter. I'm gonna slide this back on and kind of eyeball it. And now I'm just gonna kind of finger tighten across from each other. Gonna go ahead and finger tighten the snare side down. Actually, you know what? This is important as far as where I put it, because I gotta have the hole for the snare wires. That was goofy on my part. All right. Okay, I'm just finger tightening. Notice I'm not really putting any more lube on the drum or anything. That the drum has a hard enough time staying in tune as it is, and I don't necessarily want to lubricate this any more than what's already there. As you can see, there's still a lot of grease already in there, so I don't necessarily need to lubricate that anymore. Is it heresy to think that a little bit of grit in your lugs is a bad thing? Because it's that little tiny bit of grit. Now I'm not talking about pouring gallons of sand, but it's that little tiny bit of grit that helps your lugs kind of stay in there. So I'm not super insane about getting all lubed up for my lugs here. All right, so everything's kind of finger tightened. So now I am going to start cranking it down a little bit. So I'm kind of counting in turns here. Because what I need to do is get the side to an even spot so I can tune it, make sure it's nice and centered. So I'm going to get the drum in tune with itself and then go from there. So let me see where I'm at. I got kind of a low spot on this side. Make sure that's also where my my hoop is a little out of round. I'm gonna want to wipe down the bearing edge when I get on the other side. This side looked pretty clean, so I didn't really worry about it. Now notice I'm muffling the batter side with my other hand. Otherwise, you're gonna get kind of a distorted sound. All right, still have a little bit of a wrinkle here. And I'm listening for the different pitches. So you hear that's kind of dot, dot, dot. dut, dut, dut. Now I've already cranked that lug a little bit, so I'm going to go across and crank it. All right, once it's in tune with itself, I'm going to kind of push down a little bit. You know, just to kind of loosen it up. Not too hard, just a little bit. All right, now I'm going to give it kind of a quarter turn all the way around. My rule for tuning snare drums is I like a tight bottom head to almost, not as tight as it will go, but I like a very tight bottom head because the tightness of your bottom head will help to dictate the response of it. I like to be able to kind of lightly tap on my snare side or my batter side and get snare response. If you're tapping and you don't hear the snares even when lightly tapping, then that means that your snare side isn't really giving you a good snare response. So a tighter snare side head will actually accomplish that. All right, so now I have that. I'm not going to put the snares on yet because I want to go ahead and change the other side. So I'm going to flip it, okay, and I'm going to pull off my lug locks and pray that I can put them back on again. If not, I'm going to have to go buy some more. All right, these just pop right off. So just little bits of plastic here that pop right off. Kind of hard on your fingers. So I'm just going around the drum and I'm popping off all of my lug locks, which have been on for a number of years that I do not want to admit on the air. There's going to be a lot of junk in the little bearing edge, not the bearing edge, but there's going to be a lot of junk kind of in between the head and the hoop. So I'm not really looking forward to this. All right, same technique. I'm going to loosen, go across the drum to the lug directly across it. Then I'm going to go over one lug. It doesn't matter if you go to the left or right. And then I'm going to loosen it, go directly across, loosen it, go to the lug next to it, loosen it, go directly across, loosen, directly across, loosen, across, over, loose, across, over. Wow, this head has long since given up the ghost. All right, I have two keys here. I'm going to put two keys on either opposite lug, and I'm just going to spin them down. These are just little cheapy keys. I make it a habit never to throw away drum keys. I have a whole bag of drum keys that just I get either I get an inkling, I'm like, I want to buy some drum keys, or they're given to me, or they come with gear. It seems like every single drum I buy, whether it be, you know, an expensive drum or a cheaper drum, even like cheap drum sets, they all come with drum keys. And so I like to keep quite a few keys laying around. I actually have a tackle box. And in that tackle box, I keep a lot of spare parts. And drum keys are part of my tackle box. In my tackle box, I also keep a screwdriver. This is just a little, I have a cheap Cobalt, kind of a ratchet screwdriver that I use that comes with all kinds of bits on the inside. And these bits are all different sizes, and they're Phillips and flat, different. And then I also keep in my toolbox another little jeweler's screwdriver, and this has little bits that come apart as well. So those are the two big actual tools I keep in my tackle box. The other things are, and I think I've talked about it on this show, but I keep felts and snare cords, not snare strands, but snare cords, and I keep springs, lugs, washers, wing nuts, because you just never know. You never know when something's going to break, and you're going to be in a pinch. This has been great for my students as well, because they don't have the benefit of being a drummer for 25 years and just collect a bunch of parts. Now I have a bunch of more black junk on my fingers as I did from the top, so I'm gonna be really careful what I touch here. All right, I'm just going to lift off the hoop. This hoop's a little bit more in the round. And here's my head, and it's really disgusting and gross. And it looks like all the this is all just stick dust and shavings from years of backbeats. And I am ashamed on how long it's been. I'm just going to throw that away and forget it ever happened. Forget it ever happened to me. I'm ashamed how long it's taken me to change this head. Like I said, it was a little bit of fear. And so I'm getting over it here, right in front of you. I'm going to wipe down my bearing edge. It's a steel drum, so it's not, you know, there's nothing I can really do to this bearing edge to hurt it. It is steel. I mean, I could take, you know, a hammer or something and start bending it. Also going to turn it over and kind of wipe out anything else that might have gotten into the inside of this drum. Just clean it up just a little bit. It doesn't affect the sound. It just it's just for aesthetics and just knowing that you have kind of a clean instrument, especially when you're dealing with kind of quasi vintage instruments. I guess this would be, it's a '69, so it's a vintage instrument. It's not even technically a vintage. It is a vintage instrument, but knowing that it's clean, just I don't know. Maybe some part of me believes that it sounds better. All right, so now I have the snare drum kind of where I want it. I like the strainer being in easy reach, and I actually like putting it directly in front of me, not to the side, kind of between my legs, if you will. Ooh, let me wipe down. I'm going to wipe down this hoop as well. All right. So I would like to put the head with the logo kind of directly across from where I like it. That's just kind of my anal retentiveness kicking in, because I like it to be kind of a good presentation. I like logos on the top, even though on my drum kit I have my metal tom is kind of not that way. But a little part of me dies every time I play. Okay, not really, but. All right, like I said, this is a Genera dry head, and it has the holes in it and dries out the sound. So now I'm going to finger tighten, not using the keys, because I don't necessarily want any extra weight. The keys, when I take the head off, is just a way for me to kind of maximize the time, or minimize the time it takes to pull off those lugs. But now, just like with the bottom head, I'm finger tightening, making sure that it's staying center on the drum. The hoop is centered on the drum. Okay, so come on now. Okay, I'm going to go around one more time, because what will happen is as you finger tighten, other lugs will come loose as the hoop comes down. Push it a little bit. Man, already tons of fingerprints on the head. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay. I'm over it. All right, now I'm going to take my key, and I'm going to do the same technique. Kind of. You'll notice the other lugs beside it will loosen up. That's all right. The idea is we need to get it in tune with itself, and then we can start counting turns. I don't really... A lot of guys ask me about drum dials and do I like using drum dials, and I understand the value of them. I like the drum dials that actually measure the tension on the head versus the tension or torque on the lug, because there are a lot of factors that go in to affecting the tension on the lug. It could be some grit. You know, I mentioned grit in the lug itself, and as opposed to the tension rod. I think I keep calling this the lug. This is the lug. This is the tension rod. If you get grit in the lug, then the tension rod is going to be a little bit tighter. If it's slightly kind of off-centered, then your tension rod is going to be a little tighter. So I don't like drum dials that measure tension rod torque. Rather, I'm more okay with drum dials that measure the tension on the head. I will say though that they're a little frustrating to use. I've had a student that has one, and they're a little frustrating to use. So I just kind of do it the old-fashioned way. I just kind of wing it, eyeball it, or earball it, or whatever. All right, now I'm gonna mute the bottom head. I'm going all the way around the head to just kind of take a pulse on. So I know that this side here is tighter than this side. So my first option is, I don't want to lower it necessarily, is I'm going to tighten where it's lower. And this comes with practice. I know you might be listening to this at home or watching on DTU and you're like, I don't hear the difference. It does come with practice. The more you do it, the easier it is to hear these nuances. All right, I'm just going to hit it. Doesn't have the snares on it. All right, it's a little loose, but I want to go ahead and put the snares on before I start actually fine-tuning. Okay, let me get a couple of snares. Actually, I think there are some snare strands in here. Thank you, Ludwig. All right, so I'm going to put on the snare strainers, or the snare strands now. And this is from Ludwig. They were nice enough to provide a couple of snare strand cords. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And they also provided the plastic strips, which you find on more modern drums. This actually doesn't have that option, and that's okay. That's okay. You're just going to have to kind of tie it off the old-fashioned way yourself. Like I said, these are the snare strands that they actively put on Supraphonics. As a matter of fact, I don't think Ludwig has an entire array of snare strands. They might have shorter ones or wider ones, but I don't think they've really gotten into the snare strand market as far as all the different materials and copper. That's a level of attention to detail that I just don't quite possess, and so I'm okay with that. Okay, putting the snare strands on can be one of the trickier aspects of swapping out your snare drum, and the reason it can be tricky is because of where the strainer is. You want to make sure that it's centered on the head. You don't want it to kind of pull, and so what you want to make sure to do is kind of loosen your strainer just a little bit. Probably more, because that's going to be your fine tuning. Okay, and so I'm just going to run the snare strands, or the snare cord, through my snare strands. I'm going to run it through my snare strands. Okay, now I'm going to put this through my hoop, the hole in the hoop here, and I'm going to run this up through my strainer and out the front. And this can be tricky. This can be tricky because it's tough to get back there. Let's see, why don't I go in the front here? And then I'm going to go in the front and then pull it around through the back. This is thrilling, I know, for you guys at home. And infuriating for me. I'm beginning to wonder, or see, why they switched to the plastic strips. Yeah, the problem I'm running into is the snare cord is fraying, and so I'm having to kind of trim it off and take a new start here. had scissors worth a darn, that would help. Okay, thankfully this is less of a problem on the butt plate because the butt plate doesn't have these little minuscule holes to try to navigate into. So I am going to switch. Tell you what, we're going to take a little break. Let me let me get this done, and so you guys don't have to sit here and watch it. So we're going to take a quick cut, and I will see you. And when you come back, these will all be happily in. Okay, we are back, and this was an exercise in patience and an exercise in alternative words for how I feel about doing this. It's frustrating, and like I said, this is why companies have gone to using plastic strips, because the plastic strips are just much easier to deal with for this very issue. But if you have a vintage drum like this, and you have to work with these, then patience can be a virtue. Another thing you can do is these are polyester strands, and so you can just simply kind of burn, lightly burn in a safe, well ventilated with safety goggles type of an environment. You can burn the edges of these and melt them, and that makes them. The problem comes when they start fraying and can be very frustrating. All right, I'm sure there are all kinds of crazy special knots that some guys use for this. I don't really have any special. I wasn't a Boy Scout, so just a straight ahead knot works for me. I just make sure to tie it a couple of times, you know, almost to the point of too much. I don't want to put a crazy knot that I can't get out, so just 3 should do the trick. And I go ahead and throw my strainer to see what it's going to look like when the snares are pulled on. Now I still have left myself some room with the adjuster, so I can adjust it. So, all right. So now that side's done, and that's the hard part. The other side is significantly easier. Significantly easier because you don't have to try to thread it through one of those holes. So I'm just going to put it into my strainer, or my snare strands rather. Oops, I just needed to come on top of those. Suddenly feels like a cooking show. That's weird. Feels like a cooking show. Where in cooking shows, though, they have a staff of people that prepare all the food for the star to come out. Me, nope. I don't have a staff of people. It's me and my drum and you. So thank you very much for tuning in. I'm going to throw it in here. I have my my butt plate is nice and loose, so I'm just going to feed it through the butt plate there. I do not like to remove the butt plate fully because it can be kind of a pain to get back. So I just kind of feed it through, just like that. I feed it through, and then with the snare strings kind of loose, now I'm going to go ahead and tie the knot with it loose. As far as the strainer, I don't want it too tight because I don't want to create a problem when I go to put the snares on. I don't want there to be too much tension. All right, so it's a similar kind of knot on the other side, and now I've already got kind of the makings of it, of what I need. Just a really simple, basic knot, and now I'm going to tighten up my my butt plate. And I'm keeping the snare strands kind of pulled down, not super tight, but I'm keeping them pulled down so that I can have a little bit of tension, but not too much, because what I don't want to do is choke out the sound. All right, I'm going back and forth on the screws. I'm not screwing one in all the way in and then going to the other one. I'm just kind of taking little turns on each side. And once it gets kind of tight enough to where the snare strand cord is staying in place, then I'll kind of tighten it down. And this is going to put a clamp, the clamp on the snares. You don't technically need this knot, but the knot's just kind of a safety gap, just in case the snare strands come off. You don't have to go fishing in the middle of a gig on a dark stage. All right, I can already tell that that I'm a little too tight, because when I try to throw my strainer, I'm having to dig way down, and you could see that it's not quite as centered as I would like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up the butt plate just a little bit, and I'm going to release a little bit of the tension on it, and I'll make up for the balance of that tension. I'll make up for the balance of the tension on the other side. So I'm just going to release the butt plate tension just a little bit. I'm going to tighten up my strainer side. Now I'm going to tighten back up my butt plate, clamp down those snares again. Nice and loose, but that's okay, because I'm going to make up for the tension, because I've really released my my snare strainer. So I can tighten it up and see how it sounds. Love it. I love this snare drum. Okay, now I can tell by playing it that that it's a little loose, and I want a more when I go to do, I can tell that it's a little loose for me. I'm going to want a little bit of easier rebound, so I'm just going to crank it up, just like maybe a quarter of a turn, eighth of a turn, just a little bit. And I'm tightening, eighth of a turn, across, over, across. See how it sounds. Okay, and look at that. Look how lightly I'm touching and I'm getting snare response. That's exactly what I want. Notice that the snare strands are relatively centered on the bottom head, and that's exactly what I want. We want the snares to be nice and centered. You know, they're not too snappy. They're not choking. They're not choking the sound of the snare drum out, and there we have it. Now, the one thing you'll need to be aware of if you do a lot of recording and you're going for this kind of really light sensitivity, sympathetic vibrations can be a really big problem. In so much that the vibrations from your toms or your bass player or whatever will have a pretty big impact and can make the bottom head buzz. All right. So as far as for fine tuning, that really comes with experience with the drum. It comes with, you know, how do you want your snare responses? I'm pretty happy with this snare response. It's giving me a lot of what I want. The snares aren't too ringy, but I've given myself and left myself a lot of room to work. That's what I want. Let me choke it down for you. You see how that's kind of a choked sound? I don't want that sound. I'm just going to loosen it up just a little bit. Not too loose. right. So that is a complete, I mean, that's a complete reworking of my 1969 Supraphonic serial number 781170. That's a pretty old serial number, but that's a new head, new batter head, new snare side head, and new strands with the ever frustrating snare strands. I'm gonna before we go, I'm gonna take a look at all my knots just to make sure. You do want to periodically check up on these. I'm gonna go ahead and put a few safety knots just in case. And if you really wanted to be serious about it, then you could actually melt these knots just with a little lighter. Just kind of put a little heat to it, and that'll make them melt and make them stick together. If you put too much heat on it, then you can make them melt and actually weaken the integrity of the snare strand. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope for you DTU subscribers, you've enjoyed kind of seeing the process. For you Drummer Talk podcast subscribers, I really hope that that kind of being talked through the process was helpful for you. Thank you very much for hanging out with me on this this snare repair and complete changeover from heads to strainers to snare chords. Until next time, peace.